Okay, it looks like we are live. I'd like to welcome everyone here and watching us live stream to the April 13th Sherwood School Board meeting. And with that, if you could all please rise, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of Okay, thank you. It's really great to see everybody's faces. Yeah, it's so nice. I'm happy to not be wearing a mask right now, so it's really good. I'm glad we're on the back end of this whole thing. As we start the meeting, there's just a couple of things I want to share, just quick reminders about being respectful to those presenting. We need to remain quiet, observe appropriate behavior, no clapping, booing, hissing, cheering, pointing. The board just needs to hear the speakers and the presentations fully. So the audience just doesn't need to be part of that presentation or interruption. And if those guidelines aren't adhered to, then we need to recess via live stream. I will say there is an exception. There always are exceptions. For Spotlight On, you are absolutely welcome to clap. So that's a little bit different. We kind of recognize that there are times where, yes, please share with us in those things. So we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. And those are just items that are routine in nature and don't require additional board discussion. And we can vote them as a group. So with that, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion, comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The consent agenda is passed. And we will move on to the Spotlight On one of our favorite sections of our meetings. And I would like to welcome Mr. Mitchell, principal from Sherwood High School, to the podium. The floor is yours.
All right, Superintendent Cordy, Chair Hecker, Board of Directors, thank you for having us today. You have in your packet a much longer list of a lot of accomplishments of our students at the high school over the winter. I would like to highlight a few of them and then most importantly, turn it over to some wonderful students to highlight some fantastic things that they are involved in. So some highlights from our winter athletics and activities. Our wrestling team finished 24th at state with two of our wrestlers, Seth Glenn and Seth Everhart, receiving all state awards. In basketball, we had Owen Cottle is first team all league and player of the year in our conference. He was also selected for the state senior all-star game, which is a huge honor. They have not done all state teams yet, so we don't know the results of those, but are hopeful for Owen. On the girls' side, they have Lauren Howard was selected as the coach of the year. Mandy Jensen was selected for the state all-star game as well. And Ava Hayden was the player of the year in the league. For cheer, they finished 8th at state. I'm going to skip over dance for a moment. In band, we had two students place first in our district and then qualify into state. Holly Schroeder in bass clarinet and Andrew L. Sheekley right here in timpani. Winter percussion, we're going to have a student talk about that. And then in speech and debate, our state competition is coming up and our team is qualified. That will be in a couple weeks. But what I would really like to do is highlight some fantastic things from our students. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrew L. Sheekley to talk about our band and winter percussion.
Hi there, I'm Andrew L. Sheekley. I'm a senior at Sherwood High, and I'm part of the band program. Yesterday for our wind ensemble, we went to the league band festival and took first there. And for the winter percussion side of things, we've been undefeated all season. It's a group of kids that spends 5 or 6 months preparing a 6 to 7 minute show. Work really hard at that, and we've had a lot of success. We ended the season, our local tour at Sherwood High School with NWAPA championships here, our Northwest region, with the highest score in program history, 92.6. And we're currently preparing to get on a plane and go to Dayton, Ohio for World Championships. First time a high school in Oregon has gone, and we are going the highest class of any high school in the Northwest.
Thank you for that. I will also add they are ranked #1 in the nation. So that's the nation. That's pretty cool. I'd like to turn over to Maddox Gillette to talk about our Mixolydians in choir.
Hello. Recently, the Mixolydians this past Saturday performed at the Rose City Sing-Off, and we competed against 8 different high school a cappella groups in Oregon, and we actually took home first place. So you'll be seeing us at the Rose Parade this June. And we also took home a special award that said that our group has the best ensemble sound out of all the groups that were there at Rose City Sing-Off. And then also we just found out that our advanced choir at the high school, our concert choir, just placed first at league, which means they will be going to the OSAA state championships on May 7th for their choral performance.
And I'd like to introduce Kaylee Farino to talk about our dance program.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm a senior at Sherwood High School as well, and I am part of the Sherwood Arrows, and we took home second in state this year, which is the only state trophy this school season so far, which is really exciting. We also took home championship in our fall category season for hip hop and second in our POM category championship, which is a program first taking home for hip hop. And we did lots of assemblies and football game performances and had 3 all-state participants. Thank you.
So thank you for allowing us to come up and highlight some wonderful things from our students. This is just a sampling of all the wonderful things that go on at the high school, and we look forward to their success as well as everybody else's.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for being here. And this is amazing. We can't all come see you, obviously, but those of us, I love seeing this stuff on Facebook. It's nice to see such positive things, and we're all cheering for you, and we're super excited for the rest of the year and to see what it brings. So thank you all.
One thing I forgot to bring up is the community performance for the winter percussion is Friday. Doors open at 7:00. It's worth your time. It's fantastic.
It's at the high school and it's free. So come cheer them on as they leave.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. That was fantastic. Okay, and with that, I get to introduce a friend I haven't seen for a very long time, so it's great to catch up. Ms. Renee Browse from the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce.
Well, good evening, Superintendent Cordy and board, community members and staff. It's these young people here and the stories we just heard is why I'm here tonight to celebrate our school district. To give you a little bit of background, well, first of all, my name is Renee Browse. I'm the CEO of the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce. But to give you a little background, the Sherwood School District is one of the largest, if not the largest employer in the city of Sherwood. And you're responsible for the young minds, our children. You have one of the hardest jobs, and you're creating the next generation of people that are going to be filling our seats someday. So thank you for that. Each year, the Chamber of Commerce hosts an annual awards banquet. And part of that awards banquet is to honor business leaders and businesses throughout the city of Sherwood. Each year, one of those awards goes to an educator. It's called the Golden Apple Award. We start taking nominations about October and November of each year. This year, we did not receive a single nomination, and it broke my heart. So I started to try to brainstorm, how can we uplift and edify the educators, the people that are doing the hard work with our children day in and day out, and met with Superintendent Cordy, and we brainstormed some ideas, and we came up with this concept. So I'm going to read this declaration that we shared at the annual banquet, and I have a special award to share throughout the district. Sherwood School Board and community staff, it is an honor and a privilege to write this declaration of support and admiration for the entire Sherwood School District. The city of Sherwood has been listed in the top 10 best places to live in the US by Money Magazine. One of the factors listed for this is due to the top ranked schools. Sherwood School District has been ranked #2 in the state of Oregon. The Sherwood School District has state-of-the-art schools, fantastic staff, wonderful programs that encourage and support the growth of Sherwood students and make sure the school is a wonderful place for all kids. High school graduation rates are among the top in the state of Oregon with a rate of 97.62 in 2020. The district leaders and staff uphold the values of relationships, communication, trust, and transparency, fiscal responsibility, and integrity. These values have been critical for the district in the last 2 years of the pandemic as they meandered through the uncharted waters of COVID. The mandates and making sure that nearly 5,000 students were being taught, pivoting to an online platform. Not to mention the hundreds of school district employees who needed support, coaching, guidance, and care to remain flexible as they educated our students. The employees who work in the lunchroom continued to prepare meals to make sure all kids had a decent lunch while participating in online school. Teachers were adapting to meet the needs of the students. Extracurricular activities, while difficult to manage in an online atmosphere, also did what they could to adapt and be flexible. There are a number of instances where the school district employees, the team, went above and beyond during the pandemic to meet the needs of our students. They have taken a beating in the public. They have sacrificed a lot to make sure that our children are still being educated to the standards of this community. This year, instead of recognizing one educator who makes a difference in the lives of our kids, the Sherwood Area Chamber of Commerce recognizes, applauds, and stands behind the entire school district. As the recipient of the Golden Apple Award, we thank you for the dedication, service, and education you provide for our kids. And in honor of that, I'm sorry, my fingerprints are all over it now. You'll have to wipe it off. We have this beautiful award that was made in recognition of the entire school district. Thank you for all you do. You can prominently display this wherever you see fit. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Renee, and to the chamber for your continued partnership as well with the school district. We appreciate it and appreciate you being here. Okay, so as we move on to the next section on the agenda, yes, please feel free. Students, go do your thing. I appreciate it. We'll move on to reports and we'll start with Dr. Cordy.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Directors. That spotlight on was one of the best that we've had in a long time, and it's really hard to follow those amazing kids and just the really wonderfully supportive words via that declaration from the chamber. So I just have great appreciation for everybody we just honored and all the hard work of our students. And thank you, Renee and Chamber. So there is no way really that I can top what those students shared about the amazing things that are going on in the Sherwood School District. The percussion ensemble earned a first place trophy at the state championship on April 9th, headed to Dayton, Ohio to compete in the world championships. One thing that wasn't mentioned was the Need for Speed Invitational Track Meet that at SHS we hosted 25 teams and 860 track athletes. That was also on April 9th. It was a huge success. Students preparing for prom. I've had recently the opportunity to meet with my high school student advisory team, which was just wonderful and the highlight of probably my month. And we have exciting new hires who are going to be joining our teams. So lots of exciting news. Just yesterday in our district admin meeting, our teams were working on developing school improvement plans for next year, while also discussing the professional development that would accompany the elements within those school improvement plans. And I know that I can truly speak for my entire team when I say that being able to focus on education and these activities and the traditions and planning for next year has been wonderful. It has been an absolute joy to be able to focus on the work recently. I would like to take a moment to follow up on questions that were raised at our March 9th board meeting regarding our health curriculum, specifically related to the availability of the curriculum for review by families and the curriculum's upper elementary and middle school identity lessons. When we asked the publisher how best to share those lessons and resources with parents, they directed us to use the family portal. While helpful, the family portal only shows the student magazine portion of the lessons, but not the lesson plans that the teachers use for instruction. These lesson plans are a critical part of the instruction that keeps us in line with required state standards and covers the lessons that can be the most controversial. In other words, what parents can access online does not include the entire curriculum and omits the teacher's script and lesson plans, which is potentially something certainly our families may want to review. To address this, we purchased an additional set of instructional materials that remains in each of our elementary and middle school offices, as well as the district office for families to view. And we realize, our team realizes that this is frustrating for parents, and we as a district are also frustrated. My team reached out to the publisher to share these concerns and seek a possible solution. And after talking with the publisher this week, we are really hopeful that for next year, we can share the most sensitive lessons online through the family portal, and we were really excited to hear about that possibility, knowing that it could really increase access and transparency. In addition, we've been consulting with district counsel, legal counsel, as well as the publisher and their legal team to work on solutions to increase access for this year. So we'll keep you posted as we learn more on that piece. Regardless of the outcomes of those efforts, these materials will remain available at each of our schools and our district office for families to view during business hours. Another concern noted in public comment at the last board meeting was the term heterosexual was not included among a list of terms that could be used to define one's identity. The term heterosexual was omitted in the 3rd and 4th grade health lessons on that topic, but was included in the 5th grade lessons. Our team noticed that as well. And even prior to the last month's board meeting, our team reached out to the publisher on February 1st to inquire and inform them of this oversight. Our team also noted that non-binary was not included either. And in following up with the publisher this week, we learned that the lesson is currently under review and will likely be changed for next school year. I just wanted to follow up and make the board and the public aware that my team and I are aware of those oversights and are working with the publisher to fix those. While we understand that topics related to health and identity can be uncomfortable, these are components of the curriculum which fulfill state standards. As a district, we're mindful of this. And we continue to welcome and value the input of all. That concludes my report this evening. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Ella and hear about the high school.
Good evening, Board of Directors and Dr. Cordy. Thank you so much for having me. With most of the work behind us, we have started to move into our end of year traditions and celebrations. Next week, we are holding our student council elections with lots of speeches and meet and greets throughout the next week. And we'll have voting and our final student council for 2022-23 on Friday. And I'm hoping to bring the incoming ASB president to the next school board meeting so that they can get acquainted with their role as the ASB representative. Additionally, we are hosting our first mental health week where we are going to focus on self-care. We're thinking about having maybe a yoga instructor at lunch, some tea and hot chocolate, just really focusing on mental health that week. Prom season is in full swing. We are very grateful to be able to host our 2022 prom through the Enchanted Garden at the Portland Art Museum. Tickets went on sale on Monday, and we are super excited for that to happen. Finally, we are excited to announce a brand new event. We are hosting a Spring Fest towards the end of the school year. There are much more details to come, but it is going to be some carnival style booths hosted by our school's clubs, as well as some community involvement. Everyone is welcome to come, and there will be more details in the near future. And then we are just looking forward to Decision Week, our last day of school, and graduation. And we would like to thank the SSD staff for everything that they have done for all the students throughout our time in the Sherwood School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Nangaro?
Didn't have anything to report.
Director Adamson?
Thank you. And just I'm so excited about all the reports this evening and particularly highlighting all the great work of our students that are in sports and are in all kinds of activities and just the great work they do. I do want to take a quick second and thank some community partners. April 9th was probably the busiest day that I have seen at the new high school. About 2,000 track students and about 1,500 band students, and every parking spot in the nearby area is full. And in particular, I'd like to thank Countryside Church and the Elks Club for sharing their space and being so gracious about that and making it possible just to be in the space that we had all dreamed and envisioned, and seeing kids in a wide range of activities pursuing joy. And that's just everything we hoped for. And I spent the entire day with a smile on my face and just really thrilled. Even in the rain and the cold and the wonder, it was just lovely to see all the kids there.
Okay, and I would second that. It's so great to hear about everything this year. So my report's a little bit different. So I am officially, most of you know this, I'm resigning. I'm stepping down from the board. This is, I would say, long overdue. I meant to do it a couple of years ago, but based on the pandemic and some other things, after my youngest graduated, I'm still here. Glad to be here, but it's time. So I am officially going to give my resignation. What that means is that I will be done June 30th, so that we run kind of a July 1 to June 30th situation on the board. I have 1 year left on my term after that. So the way that that will work is that we'll go ahead and the district will put out applications, for my position, and then we'll interview those folks, I would assume, right before our May board meeting, and we'll go ahead and appoint someone so that that person can come to our June meeting and participate a little bit or see how things go. So it's tough to leave, but it's time, and I'm really excited for the next step on the board. So that's it for my report. I don't think so. Next, I don't think we have SEA or OSEA. Okay, no city council. So that's it. All righty. So the next piece we have on here is public comment. And because tonight we don't have any student public comments or anything related to an action item, we're going to go ahead and move into information and discussion. And I'm going to invite Mr. Rose and Mr. Bell to the podium to talk to us about facility use.
Thank you, Chair Hecker, Superintendent Cordy. That's Adam Mitchell's fault. Members of the board, we appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you tonight about our facilities use agreement. You may recall that at the October 10th meeting, we came and spoke to you about the district bringing the sports scheduling and landscape management back under our own control. And at the time, we spoke to you about the need for parity amongst our youth sports and activity groups. In the in terms of the fees and pricing that they had. This evening, we will update you on that, on the progress we've made to updating the actual document that groups sign and that individuals sign when they rent our facilities, and then that pricing structure, revising what the city had previously implemented. Policy requires that the fully recover cost of non-school uses. We really can't do that given the amount of expenses we have related to landscape, utilities, HVAC, those kinds of things. So this is not a situation where we're trying to claw back a whole bunch of money to make sure that we are whole, but we're really looking for that parity between groups. So that way, whether you're playing soccer or football or basketball, there's some bit of parity between the pricing structure. The other kind of outcome of this is that it will give us the opportunity to, we hope it will give us the opportunity to rent our facilities more to other outside groups. So by freeing up some time. So the only other thing that we'll also talk about is just kind of next steps. There we go. The facility use agreement we previously used was frankly old and cobbled together, and we've cleaned it up significantly, putting an emphasis on kind of setting expectations for renting and using district facilities. Just general cleanup, but also we added a few things that are important, and in the conversations we've had already with some of our youth groups, this is not news to them, but the OSAA, the Oregon Athletic and Activities Association, does have what they call the heat index. And so that's something that our athletic teams and activities have to follow on days that it's hot to make sure that we're not exercising in conditions that are not healthy for our students. So we're putting that into the actual agreement to make sure that people use that and address those needs. And then House Bill 1824, which was passed by the legislature, creates some rules around concussion and head injury. Added that to the agreement as well. So just again, trying to set some expectations about what our facilities can actually or are expected to do. Yes, please.
And the one thing I would add is that the agreement now reflects how we've been operating the last 2 years. Our written agreement really just didn't reflect the practices we'd been using. There's really nothing in here new that our groups haven't been following and we haven't been talking about. It just wasn't reflected in the agreement that because they no longer actually sign it. It's just a checkbox in the Facilitron program. Used to be part of the form they actually filled out when we did it on paper. And so this just clarifies it and puts in writing what we already operate as.
Yeah, and again, there was some old language, including like how the city manages our facilities and some of that had to come out as well. And then the other piece that we revised was the scheduling priority. And we'll get to this a little bit more in just a moment, but really making sure that people understand that district use comes first, and then local youth sports and activities are second. And we'll define local youth here in a moment, and then the other groups. And so there's a priority for our students, and then really our students that are playing other sports outside of the school day. The district does have a few needs that it must address as it relates to facility use by outside organizations. First and foremost is abiding by that board policy, which encourages the public use of facilities as long as it doesn't interfere with school operations or increase costs. And we also need to be careful not to pull general fund supported resources to support the use of facilities, again, by those outside groups. And for example, when basketball is in the gyms, our custodians are cleaning up after them. They must spend time in the bathrooms as well as the gym. And that really does take away from their time cleaning classrooms and preparing our schools for our students the next day. And so we're always kind of trying to maintain that balance between what is going to support other groups, not just local youth, but other groups in general, and what is supporting our classrooms. And so keep in mind that the funds that do support our maintenance and custodial teams are actually general fund dollars. So they are directly competing with our classroom needs for hard dollars as well when we have maintenance and repairs due to use. Whoops, too far. Sorry about that. So I want to talk a little bit about the current pricing. The pricing and the fee structure that is approved by the board each year right now calls for no fee for school use, what we would call our category 1, and then fees for categories 2, 3, and 4 for grass fields that are $35, $50, and $65 an hour. Turf fields are a bit more at $60, $80, and $100 per hour. Now, as the city managed our facilities, they changed to a different pricing structure where they charged for for youth sports, $15 per participant for unlimited grass field use. And so as we took that management back in-house, we believed that we needed to maintain that and not switch that process up on our youth sports until we had a feel for what is the pricing structure creating and bringing in for the district. Is it covering some of those hard costs? And so we have, again, for the last 2 years, maintained that same pricing structure of $15 per participant. And that's for unlimited grass and for gym use. So turf fields, we continued to charge at the schedule that was passed again by the board last year. Talk briefly about our categories. I've kind of covered category 1, it's school use. Category 2, we've defined as local youth sports. I really wish I'd added activities there, just to be very clear that we're not just talking sports. We are talking our other groups in the community that are supporting our students. We've defined local as having at least 50% of the participants being from our community, our school district boundaries. This gives, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, this gives those groups kind of priority for scheduling over the other groups. Category 3 groups are nonprofits, service clubs, higher education, other governmental agencies. And for the nonprofits, they do have to prove that they are a nonprofit. We do that through the system as well. We do have, well, the 4th category is kind of for all others. So those groups, it might be a company that wants to use our facilities for presentations and other purposes. And then we do have a 5th category, which is simply for district special use agreements. So we do have some one-offs that kind of fall into that category where we will work with an organization and directly agree to their use. So Ken is actually going to cover the new pricing structure in depth over the next few slides. And so with that, unless you have questions thus far, which you do.
Yeah, I just want to confirm, and I really appreciate the answers to the questions that you provided this afternoon, but wanted to confirm that the definition in 2, when it's finalized, will include that additional reference to activities so that that's clearer for participants.
Yeah, we always
Perfect.
intended it to be sports and activities, and I apologize. I put the slide deck together and didn't get that other word in, and by the time the question came up, it was kind of too late to change this. But yes, it is definitely sports and activity groups that are local, serving our kids.
I really appreciate that. I think I just wanted to provide that clarity for anybody that might be watching at home.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over the last 2 years, as we took over control and the scheduling of our own facilities from the city, we recognized right away that there were some disparities and that groups were paying different prices for the exact same piece of real estate for the exact same amount of time. In some cases, 5 times as much as other groups, because the per participant fee did not reflect use. It just reflected how many participants you had in your program. And so there was a real disparity in what groups were getting for that money. And it was also a real disparity in the district being able to cover even a portion of its cost, depending on those. And so we tried to gather that first year that we took that, but that was a pandemic year where literally we were closed for business in sports about 2/3 of that year. So we really didn't have enough data from that first year to make any decisions. And we had told all of our youth organizations that we were looking to change our pricing structure right when we took over, and that we were going to spend that first year gathering data. And so then when I when I talked with them all at the end of last year, I informed them again, like, because we didn't get good data, we're going to stick with this pricing structure, but it's likely you could see some changes at the end of the next year, and that we would communicate those out clearly with you before the end of the year so you could make your plans fundraising wise, commitment wise, and those kinds of things, pricing structure wise, as you move into that next year. So that's what we've done, is we've gathered data from the last 4 seasons, summer, fall, winter, spring, based on use. And oops, sorry. Our new pricing structure, we decided to go with a hybrid. One that is, we basically took the structure before, which was per participant, and reduced that from $15 to $5 per participant. And then also with usage, and did a $2 per hour charge that then would reflect how much organizations actually use the facilities, to try and create that balance and a more equitable approach to how we charge folks. And what you come out with is a price that's almost identical per sport for its hours of use. And I'll show you in a second the way that wasn't very equitable before. And so in the new pricing structure, obviously everything in category 1 that's a school district sponsored event, it does not get charged. In category 2, which are all of our youth organizations, sports and other activities, but all youth organizations that have 50% or more Sherwood School District students in their organization, are eligible to pay $2 per hour for grass fields, large and small gyms. And just so you know, if you compare this with Beaverton School District, charges the same category 2 for grass fields, they charge $30 to $40 an hour to these same groups. And for gyms, it's from $30 to $65 an hour, depending on the gym. Tiger Tualatin charges $18.50 an hour for grass fields. And for gyms, it's $19 to $25, depending on the size of the gym, with no per user fee. So these are still significantly lower than some of our competing neighboring districts. The charges in the category 2 for stadium turf, we have reduced those. What we found is our turf fields, both at the high school and in our 2 stadiums, were not being utilized on weekends and during some of those times, even though they were available, because at $35 to $50 an hour in category 2, they were just at a price that weren't accessible to our youth organizations. So we looked to decrease those prices, in some cases more than 50%, in order to give our youth organizations more of an opportunity to access those facilities. And they've been excited as we've met with them and talked with them about the opportunity to do that and utilize those more often. Category 3 and 4 changed slightly, but all we did was sort of clean up the pricing structures in those so that they're more reflective of the breaks that we did. And they just were different from grass to turf to gyms, and we try to keep them more consistent in this case in terms of the percentages that they increase with each. And so again, the only group that pays the participant fee is that category 2, which qualifies them for that prices. We do have some category 2 activities who choose not to do the per participant structure because it's actually cheaper for them to pay the hourly fee. And we've even had some sports organizations who've done that, like fall baseball, where they don't practice, but they only place games on the weekends. It's been more cost efficient for them to pay only the hourly fee and not do the participant structure because they just don't use it often enough during that season. Any questions about the new structure before we talk about what they paid before and what they'll pay in the future? So last year's charges, and these reflect the charges that each organization was charged for the use that they created. It does not reflect what they actually paid because it varies. And I'll give you some examples. In baseball and softball are given a credit per field of $350. if they get the field ready for seasonal play at the beginning of the season, which would be like skinning the infield, edging, getting home plate and the pitcher's area ready, all the different things that go with that. So we, because we don't have the manpower or the ability to do that without paying an outside vendor to do it, we give our local sports organizations the opportunity to earn credits towards their own use. So in the case of baseball, they paid like I think around $4,000 after they had their credits. Even in some of our other ones like youth football, who uses the stadium at SMS, they gain a credit there by they clean the stadium of all garbage and empty all garbages and stuff after their use every Saturday, and they get a credit towards that, which, and again, saves our staff and gives them the ability to continue to focus on our classrooms and our learning spaces instead of trying to clean up after those organizations. So this is the number of participants, the hours of use, and the total that they paid last year based on their use. Again, this isn't the actual total paid, it's the total they would have owed without credits and those kinds of things. If you take their use and calculate it per hour, you can see that there's a great disparity in how much these different organizations were paying per hour for use. In many of these cases, if you were to compare, say, baseball and soccer, they're renting the exact same field. So the soccer fields are often the outfield of our baseball fields. So they're renting the exact same field, but soccer is paying almost 5 times as much as baseball. And so that's part of that disparity we talked about in trying to find some equity and parity between those organizations, what they're paying for the same use of the same space. And I will tell you, one of the things that we ran into as we collected data over the last 2 years is that a lot of our youth organizations, because they have scheduling priority, they'll just block schedule. So they'll block every field, every date, every hour, and whether they end up using it or not. So one of the reasons why we've gone to an hourly structure, because a lot of people ask, well, why $2 an hour? Why not just keep the hourly rate at 0 and still get it through participants or some other way? It's because there is now some incentive for folks they may block out to create their schedule, but then to go back in. So this year in basketball, even though we didn't have the structure in place, they did a great job of working with us, Sherwood Youth Basketball. So they created their schedule, they blocked out everything. Then when they would go in and actually build their schedule, they would come back and give us back time and cancel the portions of their reservations that they didn't need, which allowed us then to rent those to other groups if it was possible, basketball or otherwise. And actually, most of it was used by other groups, not athletics, in the time that they were able to give back. And so we'll talk about that a little more in the next slide. And so in the new pricing structure, if we use last year's data, and again, this isn't perfect because last year was still a pandemic year where participation varied from organization to organization and things like that. So but it gives you a sense of what people might have paid that's different. You can see that using the new pricing structure, it would change for some groups what they pay. What it does do is equalizes what people are paying for the same space for the same amount of use. And it does raise the price or the overall cost for some groups. Those same credits will be available to groups that they have had before in terms of their own space. And we have been we've met with 3 of our local youth sports organizations, or 4 so far, and we have some scheduled in the next few weeks with the other ones as well to talk about this structure, to answer questions, and to take feedback, et cetera, around that. So, but this is something that I've been talking with them about and said that it was likely this hybrid structure over the last 1.5 years or so. So it's not a surprise to any of our local groups. Questions on the new structure and how that impacts our...
So as far as the groups you've already communicated with or talked to, how was that information received?
Jim's done most of those meetings, so I'll let him. I've been in on about half of them. He's been on all.
And we're trying to tag team those together, but scheduling doesn't always work that way. It varies, although I will say I've met with football, basketball and softball. And football, they're one of the groups that'll see their price go down. Basketball remains relatively the same compared to years past. And then softball is a group that their price goes up. And I will say that they understand the need for the parity. They understand what we're trying to do and the pricing structure. I was pleasantly, I won't say surprised, but I was happy that the response from them was, okay, we'll move on. And all the groups thought that they could find some efficiencies in their scheduling and save themselves some resources in that respect. The exception might be basketball, because as Ken mentioned, they already return unused hours. So it's been pretty well received, and I'm looking forward to having the conversations with the other groups as well.
And they still know they can earn some credits back. That helps everybody. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, this is one of the questions I asked, but just for the public record, the $15,000 that we talk about for clay pitchers, mounds, and batters boxes, et cetera, that is, those are general fund resources that we're spending on fields that are solely used by youth organizations or other outside organizations. These are not the costs that we pay for our competitive high school fields. Those are accounted for elsewhere. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. It's either almost all of those are at the Ridges here or at the middle school.
And that's true for the identified costs for Saturday building monitor costs for the basketball. Is that correct?
Correct. Those are building monitor costs just for our local youth sports basketball leagues
Okay,
that occur on weekends when we don't have any other employees working.
that's great. And is part of the plan for this summer to keep an eye on baseball and softball and kind of see what happens with scheduling over the summer in terms of, because my understanding from our last conversation is that those two groups in particular did a lot of block scheduling, and is the sense, at least at softball, that they can get their costs. I mean, because I'm looking at both softball and baseball as being almost a doubling of their costs, and that's pretty substantial. I appreciate the work towards parity, but I do want to make sure and am concerned about how we ensure that there is that what we don't create is a cost increase to the point of where we create an access issue for any kid. And so just really curious about whether we can get baseball and softball to work with us this summer to see if they can kind of run scheduling in the way that they would think it would play out in future years, and then look at, once we've done that, what does the cost increase look like? Are we able to do something around phasing that in a way that gets us to parity, but doesn't create a shock moment that prevents access?
Yeah, I
That was
believe
a lot, sorry.
we've met with softball already and they felt like they could make those changes. And I'm working with baseball right now, even though we haven't met with their board yet, just with their scheduling folks. And they've already did that. We had a interchange today where they already gave back a bunch of time. And last year they didn't even attempt to give that time back. They just blocked it and took it. And so I bet today they probably had, in the month of April, a couple hundred hours, or around 100 hours to 120 hours of time they were giving back off that block. So that right there would be, $250 or so just in the very first month. The challenge that baseball and softball has, and this is something we're going to work through with them, is that particularly in baseball, we've talked about this, is they don't schedule Fridays, but they block Fridays out because they use it as a makeup day when they get rainouts and makeups. So usually in most of our reservations, we require people to cancel, 7 days in advance to get their money back. But in baseball and softball, we're going to allow cancellation up into the day of use. That will allow them to block those, but still give the time back if they don't use it. So that will help as well with that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I just am, I fully support moving to a parity system so that people are paying the same amount for the amount of time that they're using. I also am just real sensitive to organizations that are running on a pretty thin margin, and just not wanting to kind of shock our families with increase costs if we can find a way to help achieve the same outcome and do it in a way that doesn't stress out organizations. So I appreciate the continued flexibility and looking for solutions in partnership.
So our next steps are pretty simple and straightforward. We will continue to meet with those sports groups. We'd hope to meet with soccer, but they're actually meeting right now. So that's going to have to be on another date. We will go ahead and update that facility use agreement in Facilitron. So that way any new users are signing the up-to-date version with some of those requirements and changes we wanted. And then we'll come back to you as part of the normal process in June and ask for a change to this fee structure. And then we also believe that we need to look at the board policy after we get these in place and make sure that that is in alignment with what the board wishes and with what we're putting into place.
I really appreciate that. And I really would like to see us talk maybe more about kind of this equity principle that we're trying to get to in the board policy, as well as removing the need for us to break even, because I just think that that's unrealistic. And I think that is a legacy idea that we need to kind of undo, because the reality is that, especially with use by our local organizations, those are kids of taxpayers that are paying quite a bit to build these facilities, and they were built so that we could have more kids using them. And so I'd really like to see that pulled out.
Yeah, I would add that if you look at our outdoor facilities in particular and the amount of care and maintenance they take to maintain a competitive field, we would not be able to charge a fee that could cover that and still have any of our users be able to take part in that. Our cost there is in the six figures per year. So
I just wanted to add to that, this sports was a huge part of my life, growing up, playing basketball, football, running track. And as a child, I learned a lot about teamwork and sacrifice and, some of those life skills that you need when you get older. So I think it's really important to make these sorts of things as accessible as possible to as many families as possible. So thank you.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Okay, so we will, we've circled back around now to public comment. We do have some public comment. Just a couple things as a reminder. We have in-person public comment, and then we only have one electronic comment. So we'll start in person, then go to the electronic and come back. So comments are to be appropriate in nature, not to exceed 3 minutes. They're not a discussion or a debate with the board. It's our chance to listen to the public. And I think that covers it. So with that, I would invite Mike Highland to the podium to start us off tonight. Mike, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, there we go. So first off, I wanted to thank you, Sue and Jessica. I met you both 16 years ago working on the bond that built the Ridges. In fact, I used to call you, Jessica, and Connie, who was on the board at the time. I would call you the three amigos. I've never seen a group of people who worked so hard and made a greater contribution to the community that they live in. Years later, we worked on the bond for the high school. So it took 15 years to fix the overcrowded school situation in Sherwood. But you three, more than anyone else, got the job done. So, and this community owes you a great, a thanks that can never be repaid. So I realize not having the full board here that, part of the agenda that I'm going to be speaking about, we're going to do that next month. But since it has been made public, I thought I could at least get started on my comments. So I am in support of the complaint against Director Thorne, asking that an investigation be made and for appropriate action to be taken based on the results. The complaint details what we consider a violation of our oath of office for welcoming and encouraging the group of protesters who caused violence at the high school and called our teachers child abusers and Marxists. This occurred during the mask mandate on February 8th. She mentioned you admired their efforts at other districts. They caused disruptions and welcomed them here. A board member can express their personal opinion just like anyone else. But when in public, they must clearly state that this opinion is their own and they are not acting as a member of the board. At a minimum, Director Thorne should apologize to the people of Sherwood for welcoming and encouraging this group. On a personal note, here are my deepest concerns. Director Thorne has stated and has run for this nonpartisan board as a partisan conservative. This is a nonpartisan board, and the focus must be on the highest quality education of all students. This board is not for partisan political attacks. What will happen in Sherwood if a partisan conservative majority takes control of this board? Could we see an attempt to implement a don't say gay policy, as many conservatives are trying to do in other states?
Okay, sorry, Mike, that's the 3 minutes. So, yep, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, and with that, we will have, I believe Mr. Emmert is going to read our electronic comment, and then next up, Wendy Wells will follow.
Brian Yoshinaka. Dr. Cordy and Sherwood Board of Directors, community leaders are and should be held to higher levels of accountability and scrutiny than the average citizen. Their words matter. Their actions matter. Trust from the community they have sworn to serve is critical. And when there are questions as to whether oaths and by association the public trust have been violated, we owe it to ourselves to take a closer look. The complaint process we're discussing tonight is designed to do exactly that, with a neutral party investigating and reporting back to the board. We should all welcome this opportunity to gain clarity. To those claiming these most recent complaints are simply bullying and character assassination, I must ask, where were these accusations when a former board member was being attacked online leading up to and especially following the last election? Who among you said things had gotten out of hand when a community member confronted him at his home? Did you call for civility when he was taunted online after an injury? Now we find ourselves in a situation where one of your ostensible leaders faces legitimate community pushback via official district and school board protocol. And this is bullying? Now things have gone too far? These arguments would have been more convincing if they had come while you and certain candidates, board members were on the attack over the last 2 years, denigrating anyone who disagreed with you. Coming now, they ring hollow. Regardless, if you're confident no oath was broken, no district policies were violated, let the process play out. If everything was above board, you have nothing to fear. It's important that we hold our elected officials to a higher standard. A sworn oath should be taken seriously, not disregarded when it's not convenient and not considered conditional because you think your cause is righteous or because your campaign was bankrolled by special interests. To the board directors, I implore you, let the process proceed as designed. Approve a third party to look into these matters. I know this is a difficult decision because it involves a colleague and in some cases a friend. It's important, however, that you clear away the haze that has enveloped this body before we can move forward effectively.
Thank you. Okay, Wendy Wells, the floor is yours. For
Thank
3
you.
minutes.
My name is Wendy Wells. I've lived in this district for 40 years or plus. And this is actually the second time that I've ever really been concerned about what was going on in front of our board. That was a book banning example in 2008. And our board did the right thing and did not ban that book. I ask you now, please complete the investigation necessary on the 2 complaints. We need to set the record straight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Mr. Jeff Roberts.
Thank you for your time. It's nice to be here without a mask. I'm following up from last month, my concerns about the transparency, the balance, the safety, the equity of the teachings and the curriculum. My daughter's in, one of my daughters is in 3rd, so that's what drew my attention. I ran out of time the last time. I wanted to thank, first off, Ms. Cordy and those who have looked into the curriculum, and I appreciate starting to take some of those steps. The attention comes from a loving father who takes his role very serious, and I want to trust and support the curriculum, and that's how I started off my my message last time was, if it's something that's wonderful, that's true, that's virtuous, we should celebrate that. And if it is of a sensitive nature, especially parents, we want to trust you. And I feel like oftentimes as we adults, we've been discussing these things, we've been aware of them for 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, and we forget that some of these kids, these children, are just learning basic things. And so something that seems very normal to us is rocks their world, and it influences them in negative ways or in mature ways that it's not time yet. My concern that as I was running out of time last time is that I want somebody on the 1 or 2 members of the school board to be on the health committee and to review anything that goes with the health before it is. And I'd like that presented to the community, to the parents. Have a school board night, have a health night, and you'll find the majority of people, I believe, like me, who support it 100%. And if there's some sensitive issues, then let's have a dialogue because it represents our community. If we differ from the state, then maybe we take a stand. And if you have the community 100% behind you, that gets in the news. That's important. That shows we're fighting for our kids. And you think about the most pressing needs of the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it's mental health, it's emotional health. And so these ideas that haven't been vetted, in my opinion, for more than 5 years or maybe 4 years or something like that, when they're placed ahead of basic science, that's of concern. And when I find out that only a few people make that decision, that's of concern. And so again, I want to trust you. I want to work with you. And I think most of the people do. As I've talked to other parents, a lot of them receive these notices and just say, oh, it's awful. I don't even want to do it. And I say, you're missing out on some great things. So please take that into consideration, put it on.
Great, thank you. Okay, and next up, Megan Thornton.
Good evening, directors and administrators. Some people are questioning the rationale behind making public complaints to the school board against Director Thorne. And I really wish she were here tonight so that when I say her name, I can honor her and see her in person. These same people assume we're just out to get Krista and make frivolous personal attacks on her. That's not true. We're intent on acting professionally and respectfully of you and the process. The purpose of the public complaints are to shed light and obtain third-party legal counsel opinion on the actions and words of Director Thorne at the February 8th protests against the district and her vote in opposition of upholding the mask mandate that you had last summer, just as a solidarity vote. The mask mandate complaint is not about masks. That complaint was about Director Thorne voting against a mandate, which is treated as a law in the same way executive orders by the President of the United States are treated as law. They're edicts from the top government officials that citizens are supposed to follow. The Oregon legislature provided Governor Brown the authority via a vote, the actual process of a vote, to set mandates during a pandemic. I can send you the exact law giving her the power. This legal process is not up for debate. This is the law, how it works, whether we like it or not. By voting no, Director Thorne violated her oath of office to uphold the federal, state, and local governmental policies. The other complaints relate to the protest. Director Thorne spoke against the board and the district that she represents. She's on video doing this. That video is included in one of the complaints for your review. As an individual, Director Thorne can speak against the district and the board, but then she needs to be abundantly clear that it is her personal opinion. In fact, say, in my personal opinion, to be clear that the perspective is not representative of the whole board. Because she did not, we filed a complaint against her, asserting her violation of her oath of office and other board policies. I want to be abundantly clear to Director Thorne. These are not personal attacks on you. These are formal complaints that follow the procedure outlined on the school district's website. I would appreciate Director Thorne's acknowledgement that these are not personal attacks. Stop the vicious division in our community surrounding her behavior on February 8th. She ran a campaign and was elected to present all of us in the community, not just those who agree with her on her perspectives. Please start respecting all of us, represent all of us, and act how a nonpartisan board member should act. Thank you, board.
Thank you. And I think that's it for public comment. So before we go ahead and adjourn, I want to acknowledge a couple people. So Miranda Johnson, Miss Johnson, thank you so much for filling in. You've done an amazing job in the last several weeks, taking care of all of us and the district in Christine's stead. So thank you so much. And Mr. Starts back in the back. Thank you for being our technical person tonight. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. The next meeting of the board will be a work session on April 27th, followed up by a